Hey, we got Lenny on the line along with Wes Carter, and we're talking about the unfortunate situations happening in Maui, but people coming together. You've been right in the midst of it. What's your update today?
Well, it's been really intense. It's been about a week of just grinding every day, trying to figure out where I'm useful. And I think a lot of community members have been trying to figure out where they can best put their efforts. It's an example of some of the, you know, community leaders that have risen up, kind of the reluctant hero, the reluctant leader, that are kind of manning these hubs, these really important places where people can get medicine, the internet to deal with whatever, financial stuff they have to do with their homes. And then, also just having all the right amenities to survive, housing. Guys like that, women like this, they were bartenders a week ago. And they put their whole lives online. They lost their jobs, and they themselves are volunteering. I mean, right now we have some friends that are from Lahaina that are, lost everything in the fire, but they're coming here to my place and picking up donations and bringing it to other victims. And this isn't unusual. Every single person that has lost something is actually giving back in some sort of way. And so, my part in it is like, how can I assist the best I can? I've been on the ground, I've been in the water, I've been on airplanes trying to fly stuff. I've been, calling out the government on my social media, and I've been trying to make the connection between people who can have a huge amount of support from the mainland and other islands, and get them to the right people that are on the ground every waking second.
Kai, what is the real human scale of the current situation? I mean, we've been seeing pretty horrific. I mean, the pictures and the videos, that are circulating are just almost they're hard to really even fathom the devastation. But the human toll from just a displacement perspective. I mean, how many people are currently without, shelter, food. I mean, and I realize that there are shelters that are popping up and there's a lot of relief coming. But I mean, the community there, can you give us some understanding of who those people are and what their current situation is?
Well, so yeah, to start off, it's way more devastating than the news is reporting. And, I have to hand it to the news. They've been really trying to get into Lahaina, but there's been sort of this block, and I think it's a real First Amendment issue right now. They haven't been allowing news stations in, at least the last few days. Every single day it's changing. The road's finally open. We'll see how long it stays open. I hope there's not a few bad actors that come in and are just trying to explore the rubble, because every single local does understand, you don't want to go down into the burn zone. For one, it's very toxic. There's going to be similar fallout to people that go in there that aren't protected, like there was in 9/11, with kind of the tumors and cancers that come from the rubble. I mean, it's that violent down there, with what happened. And the entire town is gone, so it's everywhere. I don't know if we'll be surfing those breaks for a year or longer, years, depending on the toxicity of the water. Fortunately, the ocean's a great filter and it'll do its best, but it's going to take a long time. I think it's going to take well over a year just to clean it up, because they have to do micro burns everywhere. So, I mean, now I think we've been just trying through our own social media get the word out. And it's not about necessarily just burning people to burn people. It's like, okay, this is a real issue right now and we need to call people out on it. And, everyone's welcoming all forms of help, whether it's from the smallest level, the littlest donation online, to people flying stuff in, supplies, to even the government level. I mean, everyone wants to help, and I think there's just been an overarching frustration that changes day to day, because the situation changes day to day. And I hope now that the road is finally completely open, that people respect the town and don't get in the way with the investigation, since there's still 1,000 people missing. And I can't imagine any one of those people that are still missing will have survived. And this is already the most deadly wildfire in the last 150 years in the United States, and it may go on to be the deadliest, which is crazy that it's happening in our backyard right now. It just didn't seem possible. I feel like it's a bad dream that I'm in, and I'm trying to assist any way I can. But like I said before, the community leaders, the people that have risen up, and all the volunteers for that matter, I mean, they're the ones that are making the real difference right now. And it's really inspiring. It's proud. And I hope when the town is rebuilt, there's a way to honor the people that perish, but there's also a way to honor the people that stepped it up. And, we can have a real community center in the heart of Lahaina, or, right at Front Street, instead of having this, kind of commercialized area for tourists. Maybe there's a place that everyone can walk and meet. And that's nothing to be discussed yet. We're still in the early days.
One of the things that has been very evident, in the footage that we have seen, and the people that are coming together, in Hawaii, they talk a lot about ohana, and you can just really feel that like family vibe of like we as a Hawaiian, as an aloha community, are coming together and helping each other out. And that has the visibility of that has been pretty obvious to me, at least. Um, what right now, like what are the critical things that this community needs? Obviously, we would assume water, food, but I mean, and I've seen from the footage that I've seen on the news, like you're right there in the middle of those communities. I mean, are people just, I guess, without anything and everything from a toothbrush to diapers for children to, I mean, you name it. There's nothing they don't need.
Well, the turnout's been insane. I mean, people, it's like there's so much overwhelming support. It's become an issue of where do you store everything. And those solutions have been coming. People have been donating 40-foot containers from different places to put on the ground and be able to store everything. So I think the supplies are coming in. I think the biggest fear is in a week's time when the news passes onto something else that people might forget. And so I think there's like three key components we got to remember that people need, like basic necessities, which is like getting food to people. So the Maui Food Bank is a really great place. They've been doing great work. And then also figuring out how to get people, funds immediately to, help sustain their family since they lost everything. Be able so they could, for one, cover their job loss. There's a lot of job loss. Be able to cover the ability to have housing, and then on top of that, for how long. So it's like almost having like just a small budget for that for now, before bigger funds can reach these people. That's, I think, like pretty critical. And then in the long term, there's no reason, there's enough money circulating out there, and I think there will be for a long time. There's no reason why we can't just rebuild everyone's homes with the donation money. And so it's about it going to the right place. And right now, we're working with a few people to create a nonprofit that will go directly to the victims, because it's in fact been created by the people that actually lost everything too. But it just turns out they're some of the smartest people in the community, and they were former heads of the Central Pacific Bank, for example. And so they get it and they know how to do it. And I think the biggest issue right now is the donations that have been going to these larger organizations. They're almost so big that all the funds aren't actually getting to the people. And for example, certain organizations have been giving money to the Red Cross, and in theory that sounds amazing, but a lot of the Red Cross hasn't done anything, or at least we haven't seen a real impact by them even being here. And that's a shame, and we don't want it. I think going to organizations that are even outside Hawaii, and especially even outside Lahaina, would be a mistake, because everyone here on Maui, or at least here on the west side of Maui, has the best intentions for the community, and no one wants to keep anything for themselves. Everyone wants it to go to the people who lost everything, and we want to rebuild our town.
The one thing that's been striking, at least for those of us that are watching, from afar, is the just the level of devastation. Has there been a lot of discussion about like how something like this could have possibly happened? The
I mean,
scale of it just seems radical.
I guess a lot of people are trying different ways to blame this tragedy. I mean, it comes down to two things: just mismanagement of land, poor response time by the electrical company. I would say lack of funding for our first responders, and I would say it was almost inevitable this was going to happen in terms of the way things have been going the last few years. And the reason why is because, these winds aren't unusual. Everyone's trying to blame climate change. They're saying these hurricanes are getting more intense. We get hurricanes all the time, and as long as I've been alive, the winds do get 70 miles an hour as they pass through the valley in the West Maui Mountains towards Lahaina. The trick is it doesn't happen consistent enough because it's about having the perfect degree angle to make it through that valley. And when you go through that valley, it acts as like basically a cannon, and it compresses all that air, and that wind accelerates. And so, last year, Lahaina town almost burnt down, and I was almost convinced Lahaina town was going to burn down. But I could never have imagined in the burning of it that this many people would perish. And it goes to realize, it makes you realize that even the town was originally the capital of the Hawaiian Kingdom, and originally it was never meant to sustain the amount of people. And so I think looking forward, we need to figure out a real plan to have, in a way, escape routes, because you don't know if this is going to happen again. For sure, number one, they got to put all the telephone lines down underground like they do in Europe and many other places. I mean, there's third world countries that have their telephone lines underground. And we live on the windiest island on here. And even across the street from my house, I'm looking at these telephone lines with trees leaning against them. I'm like, it's an accident waiting to happen. I could lose my entire neighborhood, my whole town too. It's just like, it's not a matter of if and when, so we got to get really all these preventative measures there. Bury the lines. The lines are what's causing the fires. I mean, without a doubt, 100%, this is what happened. The wind came through. It knocked down telephone lines, mismanagement of lands, no fire breaks. It lit up all this, fallow vegetation, caught trees on fire, and the wind's so strong, it was like a flamethrower shooting embers in the air and shooting flames at insane speeds all the way down into the town. And people had nowhere to escape. There was like 3 exit roads. 2 of them were like blocked by fire. So everyone couldn't even drive out. People had to get out of their cars and run or jump in the ocean. And absolute devastation. But there is no reason at all why this should ever happen again. And like I said, this was sort of a long time coming because there's always fires in Lahaina. We just need better land management, and we need our, first responders to have way more support. I mean, the water in the hydrants dried up immediately, and the firefighters were hopeless. They couldn't even fight it. And there wasn't enough firefighters because, again, it's a lack of funding issue. And everyone on Maui agrees that the first responders are, the real heroes because they've been working, a week straight without doing anything but being on the ground. I mean, I don't doubt that there was a water leak in the pipes. I mean, if the land itself, which is in plain sight for everyone to see, tourists, locals alike, when you can see that there's not really good land management, there's, the telephone lines are wrapped up in trees. I could go down there today and point my camera directly at trees that are leaning against telephone wire. And what happens when it gets really windy? The trees lean. What happens when the trees lean? It knocks down telephone poles. What happens when the telephone poles spark? The trees catch on fire. I mean, it's really basic stuff. And, if, for example, like we've had this issue down at Kahului Harbor for a long time. The water itself is, mixed with salt and fresh water, and there's very low pressure. And, it's just bad pipes, or it's old pipes. The infrastructure here is really old. We may have some nice roads that the tourists travel on, but the majority of the infrastructure here is just aging, and it's out of maybe the last time it was rebuilt was in 1970. I'm not sure exactly on that, but everything needs kind of like a real overhaul. And I'm hoping that we can start in Lahaina with making sure that everything is top of the notch, and we can make all these preventative measures. The biggest problem here and a struggle with the Maui community for a long time has been water rights. And people being able to get water. I mean, I think it was 2019 when a lot of the local people were told, hey, don't water your lawns, don't clean your trucks, don't take 5-minute showers. But, what's the most fascinating part is all these hotels were still watering their, golf courses. A single room over at one of the hotels is 2 households to a local family. and
Mm.
it was business as usual, a ton of waste of water. So Maui doesn't have, I think, a drought that's going on necessarily. It's just a water mismanagement, and it's going to all those hotels. And of course, we know this now. The local people of Maui are always put last, and they're the foundation of the entire island. Without this whole community that went up in flames, there's no one to work the hotels on the west side. And so, you got to put your local people first. And it's just bizarre that, they aren't put first. Like, wouldn't you want to put the people that hold up this entire community, the economy, the island, make them as comfortable and as efficient as possible? It's crazy. It just seems ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, at many of us that were not directly affected by the fire, but had friends and families that were in the early stages standing by, kind of waiting. All right, like, when's the local authorities going to come in? What are they going to do? And I think it hit them so over the head that they didn't even have a plan. There was no plan. They didn't know what to do, and it took the entire community banding together to find solutions. And I think in their chaos, in the nature of trying to get control of things, they've made it harder for the community to respond. And it's taken about a week for them to get their act together. And just now, it seems like our county and state is kind of getting the message of what the people wanted. And the uproar of, you know, people trying to make their voice heard through social media, through news outlets, it's been really the way to put fire under the people we've elected's butts. And listen, we don't want to like burn people to necessarily burn people. We just want people to have, to carry the responsibility that's been put on their shoulders, and to be able to come through, because they promised everybody here that they'd be there for everyone. And so far they've definitely done a terrible job to this point. But I'm hoping from this point forward that they can do an exceptional job given all the feedback the locals are giving them.
we've seen this before in our country, and it wasn't that long ago. It sounds a lot like Katrina, where yeah, there were climate issues, but at the end of the day, it was a failure of leadership. It was a failure of government, and unfortunately, in these communities where the infrastructures are not supported in the way they should be, and there are plenty of warning signs. It sounds like just like in New Orleans, just like in Maui, there's plenty of warning signs leading up that this was a real possibility that something tragic could happen. And for whatever reason, the people who are in leadership positions do not take heed, and then we have a radical tragedy. I think the narrative and the story that you're illustrating is one that the world needs to hear. Because to your point earlier, it's easy just to say, oh, climate change, and then kind of move on. But there's a lot more going on here than just a climate event. And we as a country, in this country, in this day and age, we should not be having radical tragedies like this, where thousands of people are displaced, hundreds of people are killed in a really horrific way, because we don't have the infrastructure, there to support it in the way that we should. It is just it's devastating, on so many levels. And, for those of us that are watching from afar, just know that the Hawaiian community has immense support from all the rest of America that is looking on in horror, but also are really trying to rally to provide resources in any way that we can. I know just we're in the packaging business. I know we flew, I think, 14 pallets of boxes to Maui this week, which may sound like a funny thing to donate, but PK, I'll give him a lot of credit, was talking to you and some other folks, and was like, we need places to put all this stuff. We need boxes, and so that was something that we could provide pretty quickly. And we're with New Earth. We're also doing a fundraiser right now to hopefully raise, 60, 70, $80,000 to help with the relief efforts. But Kai, I mean, for those of us at home here on the mainland, what would you recommend? Where can we put our resources? What are the organizations that you feel like are making the biggest difference? now and even weeks or months from now, how do we keep the people of Lahaina and this tragedy in front of folks that can support it?
Well, so I think it's going back to supporting organizations. If people vet and do their research on where those foundations, those organizations are based, I think anywhere based literally on Maui or in Lahaina are the organizations you'd want to support the most, because you could know 100% of what's going into Maui is going to go to the families. I think the biggest
Right.
issue is always if you're sending it somewhere else and those people want to support, everyone wants to help, but the overhead of these bigger organizations, it takes most of the funds just to support the locals. And the way people have been getting a lot of money to the right people is through GoFundMe's and Venmos. And I think doing your research and seeing who might need it the most through GoFundMe's is really helpful to them, because it goes directly into the family's hands. And that's what it's all about. We need it to go to the people immediately, and they can do with it what they want, of course, and I think most people would use it to sustain their life while they're jobless, be able to afford housing, be able to have food and other amenities. There's so much being donated, but I think a lot of people want independency too, even fuel. And so that's been sort of the best. On a bigger organization scale, Maui Food Bank, just great because they're from Maui and they're servicing the people of Maui constantly. And then right now, I think we're working on a way to raise money in a nonprofit organization from people that were victims of the fire themselves, but are some of the smartest community leaders that we have. One of which was a former head of Central Pacific Bank. And so you can trust that these people's intentions are true, because not only did they lose everything, but they are community leaders, and they also have the history of being able to handle such types of funds and get it to the right places. So, come Thursday of this week, it's going to be up and running, and I hope that people will continue to support long after the news cycle stops on this horrific tragedy, because this is something. I think the town itself will take 10 to 15 years to be fully back. I think that people won't be able to even build a single thing on their property for an entire year. And I think there needs to be sort of an umbrella for, or basically a landing pad for people to be on for an extended period of time. And so as locals, we're going to keep spreading the word.
And the commitment to rebuild Lahaina and the folks that have spent generations from that area, I'm assuming that there's a strong desire to rebuild the town, and even if it takes some time to get people back to their homes.
Well, so the biggest fear is everybody that lost their homes, I'm sure, don't want to leave Lahaina and they want to rebuild, but it's a bit of a timing thing. I mean, a lot of people can't sustain life on Maui, or even be someplace that is sustainable, like housing wise, or even, to afford what it costs to be here. I mean, people are living paycheck to paycheck in their own home. And so now it's like people might be forced to leave. And if we, in a way, it's not sort of allowing people to leave, but if we, sort of let people not, have the support they need and not have the ability to survive, and they're forced to leave, the soul of Lahaina slowly breaks away, and it becomes, in its rebuild, a new Malibu, a Waikiki. And, Lahaina was special not only because it was the economic tourist engine of Maui, but it was also, it had the most locally owned businesses of any town in Maui. And
Oh,
it
wow.
was the foundation of all the workforce for the entire west side and other parts of the island. So, of all the towns to be struck by such a tragedy, I mean, it would have been horrific at any which one, but this one really was kind of the gnarliest. And so, I've also been suggesting to people, if you want to really support the people of Lahaina, but also the people of Maui, because I think we're about to go into some really economically difficult times because tourists aren't coming to Maui right now. people are going to lose jobs with the fallout of this fire and they weren't even ever involved in the fire. So buying gift cards from local businesses and donating those gift cards or the number to people so people can go use those things to get supplies, to go get dinner, to go get food, whatever it may be, or even go shopping for new clothes for themselves. You're supporting not only the local businesses here that don't have, business since we're, tourist driven, but you're also supporting the fire victims directly too. And I think it's just really important that we make sure that the economy doesn't crash here, because if it does, then we're all screwed. And that's the problem with living on a tourist destination where, the main focal point is people visiting. Prior to this, it was agriculture, and, due to the times that stopped happening. And so there's nothing to lean on. And so we got to also remind people Lahaina may be closed, the west side of Maui may be closed, but the rest of Maui is open. And so I do support people coming back to Maui. And, it's only been a week, so it might be a little fresh for the wounds right now, but don't cancel your fall trips. Please visit respectfully, see how you can assist, of course, and help us keep this island going, because there's a lot of people that really need the support to survive.
No, I think that's a really important point that you make. I mean, my family spent Christmas on Maui last year and just had a absolute beautiful time. Such a beautiful place and wonderful people and great resorts everywhere and beautiful natural resources. And there's few places on the planet as spectacular as Maui. And I think that's a really good point. That all the rest of us need to remember that, there's a lot of people that need support, and business and industry supports the livelihood of all the citizens on Maui. And so it's important not only to give in this time of need, but to remember that, we need to support Maui just by showing up, and continuing to utilize that island for vacations and things like that. So that's certainly something that we'll pass out to the world. And again, man, just a terrible tragedy. It has been unspeakable to watch it from afar, and none of us can imagine what it's like to be in the middle of it. But just know that there's a lot of people on the mainland that are out there pulling for you guys and doing what we can to raise money and send supplies. And please keep us abreast and open to as things develop. That we certainly have a strong community that wants to support the people over there, and we really appreciate your perspectives and dialogue and information as the situation develops.
Well, thank you guys for all the support, and it means so much to the people here. And it's every day is something's changing, and so we're trying to change with it and adapt to the best possible way in order to help the people that were most affected. And at one point, hopefully, we can look back on this tragedy and find a lot of positive things to remember. Being that this community came together, but not only that, Hawaii came together, the entire country came together, and the whole world came together to support something that is super tragic and support people for the right reasons. And so we're, eternally grateful from here on Maui.
Well, thank you for your time, man. Really appreciate it. I know you're exhausted and you probably got a lot going on today too, but thank you for taking a few minutes for us. We'll be sure that this gets out there.
Sounds good. Thank you.